Hello, everybody. Hello again. And the second day of the Expert Talks on the Sustainable Challenge 21, talking about industrial symbiosis. Hello, Lizzie.
Hello, Veronica, and hello, everybody. It gives me great pleasure after yesterday, which I think really highlighted the sort of passion of all the experts involved in all the individual industries, but also all the dividing factors that can somehow stop industrial symbiosis from being successful. So today it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who's Tasha Wilcox. She's a graphic designer, artist. She's worked in the education sectors, both public and private. And she's currently part of a design studio aimed to make the world a more human and connected place. She's going to explain more about who she is. And so I will hand over to Tash.
Thank you and hello. Can I get my slides up? Wonderful. So I'm just going to correct Lizzie really quickly. I'm not a graphic designer. I work in service design area. But I used to be a graphic designer, so she's correct on that. So hello, I'm Tash. I'm the founder of Mundane a Day, which I used to call it Mundane a Day. It's now called Tash Wilcox. See what I did there? It's a one typostration a day, which is 8 years old. I'm an honorary fellow of Hyper Island, an international business school, head of learning design at SNOOK, which is famous for service design, and I co-run Design Education, which is an international cohort of over 500 humans interested in, you guessed it, design education. So why have one job when you could have four? I'm actually not going to talk directly about the circular economy, sustainability, or planet, but do stay with me, don't switch off. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about teams and ideation, because to be truly innovative in this space, in any space, in the world of chaos, your team and the humans you design with and not for are really important. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so recently I've been in an enormous battle to discover why £13.99, so £13.99, convert that into euros, is going out of my bank account monthly. It took me 3 months of Googling, talking to the bank, and finally tracking it back to a large corporate whose name I will not mention. They'd sneakily signed me up for a subscription without my knowledge. It was through an opt-out button, so I don't know if you've encountered this. It's basically you flick past and it asks you a question, but you have to opt out in the small print. And who actually reads the small print? Me. Now I read the small print. They already had my bank details, so there was one click onto the next page and they'd signed me up. And then came the messages, the phone calls, the emails, and the general frustration. I thought they were going to ask me to do a hand-delivered letter, maybe some poetry, to finally stop the subscription. And you might have gone through this. Welcome to the Roach Motel. It's a piece of intentional design that makes it easy for you to get into a certain situation, but then incredibly hard to get out. Next. And Victor Paplinek, a designer and educator, once wrote, "There are professions more harmful than design, but only few." He said this 40 years ago in a book called Design for Real World. And unfortunately, in some cases, it still stands. Designers and humanity, we've created our own roach motels. We've wandered naively in, and now it does feel in a lot of circumstances that it's almost impossible to get out. But hopefully, with new ways of thinking and less designing to sell things and more designing to solve things, to evolve things, and maybe devolve things, we as humans can go in the right direction. Next. You may or may not have heard of wicked or sticky problems. This is not Halloween related, but I thought I'd add some pumpkins. We've got a lot of work to do. A wicked problem is a social or cultural issue or concern that is difficult to explain and inherently hard, or in some cases impossible to solve for lots of reasons. It could be incomplete or contradictory knowledge, the number of people and opinions involved. Sometimes there's millions of people involved. The large economic burden, the interconnected nature of those problems with other problems. For example, take poverty. Poverty is linked with education, nutrition with poverty, the economy with nutrition, and so on and so on. Everything is linked, and you pull one thread, it suddenly pulls in a lot of others, and there's a cause and effect. Examples of wicked problems in today's society include things like education design, financial crisis, healthcare, hunger, income disparity, obesity, poverty, terrorism, and sustainability. At Snook, we work in these areas, and it's not easy, but we need to. Wicked problems are often associated with design thinking. And don't get me wrong, I love a bit of design thinking, but quite a lot of the time there's hackathons, there's people going, oh, I've been design thinking, and it's only scratching the surface of the actual problem. It doesn't sometimes get to the root cause. But what we need is bright thinkers, system thinkers, people who think differently, interdisciplinary researchers, collaborative teams who in turn collaborate with industry, local communities, decision makers, and legislators. I'm not sat here saying design will save the world, but it can help. What I'm pinning my hopes on is diverse, inclusive teams of different talents and different people working together, thinking freely in new ways. Next. But first, let's talk about those teams. I talk about teams a lot. So I used to be the director of masters at Hyper Island, and a lot of what we worked with was actually teams and humans in those teams. And psychological safety is super, super important. So in 2015, following the success of Project Oxygen at Google, they published the results of a 2-year study into what makes a great team. And you'd probably be quite surprised what they came up with. Project Aristotle, led by Amy Edmondson, a Harvard professor, who I really, really suggest go and read some of her material, it's incredible, found that the top answer to what makes a great team was not those with the most senior people, not those with the highest IQ, or even those that made the least amount of mistakes. It was psychological safety. Psychological safety is being able to show yourself without fear of negative consequences, self-image, status, or career. It can be defined as being a shared belief that the team is safe for taking interpersonal risks. It's can you sit in that team and come out with anything and know that they're not going to kick you down for it. They're not going to go, that's a shit idea. Apologies for language. So in psychologically safe teams, team members feel accepted and respected. You're not going to go and get kicked down for coming up with that weird idea, because that weird idea might be the one that answers something that nobody else can. So like working with a good fitness instructor, the team should not be comfortable. This isn't about being comfortable. Fitness instructors will help you keep safe to exercise and grow your muscles. And you will not be comfortable. You ache afterwards. That's okay. That's the way we grow. But it is super important to feel safe. The team need to, as individuals and as a team, push and find the edge of what that comfort zone is. Next. And that comfort zone is called optimal anxiety. The brain learns best when stress levels are slightly higher than normal. So I'm not saying really, really high, but slightly higher than normal. It's a space called optimal anxiety, which falls somewhere between our comfort zone, so sitting on the sofa, feeling fine, watching Netflix, and the point of giving up and running away. We don't want you that stressed. We want you in this really nice friction point in between. Next. So to paraphrase Peter Senge in The Fifth Discipline, another book that's incredible and I think everybody should read. To learn and experiment, teams cannot fear being belittled or marginalized when they disagree with peers or authority figures, ask naive questions, own up to mistakes, or present minority viewpoints. Instead, they must be comfortable expressing their thoughts about the work at hand. So we need to get used to a bit of discomfort as designers. Some of you are. I'm not saying that you're not here. I'm not using like everybody, but we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Not just around deadlines, but through voicing ideas, giving critical feedback, through debating and discourse. We need to stretch our comfort zones and trust the team. You need to really work on that trust in those teams. You need to build it rather than judge. Be judged, feel judged, or even judge ourselves. You're an important part of that team, and a lot of the time the judgment comes from you, from that sort of part of your brain at the front that sits there going, don't say that out loud, say it out loud. Okay, so that internal judgment is usually the main problem. They're not thinking that, you are. Okay, next. So we need to embrace the power of diverse and inclusive thinking. I'll admit I used to talk about diverse teams a lot. And what I actually had missed out was the inclusivity. And I came across this by Francis Frey and Anne Morris. And it's super, super important to have that inclusivity within diverse teams, okay? So a homogenous team of strong thinkers may seem great, but if you cloned Einstein and you had 4 of him in the same team, you still have one store of knowledge. You only really have one Einstein. So it's one store of knowledge from one perspective. What you need is different angles, lenses, ways of approaching with different backgrounds and experiences. So diverse teams opens the door to this. But if it's not inclusive, it's simply a diverse store of knowledge, partly stored. And you can see this in the diagram. The aim is to create conditions of trust that allow diverse team members to bring their unique perspectives and experiences to the table. You can expand the amount of knowledge that your team can access and create create an unbeatable advantage. So again, this is really explored through Francis Frey and Anne Morris in Begin with Trust. Next. So I'm just going to give you a few tips. There's a lot written about psychological safety. Some people say it's a buzzword. It's not. It's super, super important. Don't just look at it as a buzzword. So leaders and teams can start small. I know some of the students are working in small teams. You might not have a lead, but as a team, really work on this. You need to be open to build relationships, to gain trust, and it goes around in that loop. The more open you are, the more you build your relationship, the more you gain the trust. And it just keeps building and building. You can see it there in a spiral. So open and trust creates openness and trust spiral. So it builds on that. So leaders and teams can start small. Be an example. Be who you want to see in that team. Ask for upward feedback. Acknowledge mistakes. Own your fallibility. We are all fallible flesh sacks. It's okay. Own it. Seek different opinions. Be approachable. The team should learn how to view work as learning problems that requires everyone's input because the solution is unclear. So everybody needs to put their ideas in. Actively listen. This is the simplest tool that nobody really uses. Well, again, not nobody, but people don't use very well, especially me. I'm bad at listening. Actively listen to the team. Share more by responding and asking questions. Make space for all voices, not just the louder ones. That's something that I've really, really had to learn in my career. I am quite a loud voice. I'm quite confident. I'm very tiny. I'm 5 foot, but I can take up a lot of space in the room. One of the things that really, really gave me a step forward in my career was when I suddenly was taught about active listening, to step back and really, really listen. Some people it comes naturally. I had to really work at it. Next. And it's about creating a safe environment. Accept all people's ideas. Be non-judgmental. Accept seemingly off-the-wall suggestions. These could lead to innovation. Develop an open mindset. Help the teams become more comfortable with feedback. So in short, you need to get to know your team, build trust, and be in the zone where you can feel comfortable to come out with any idea, no matter how far-fetched, without feeling you'll get kicked down or judged by someone in the team. Okay, next. So why? I'm now going to talk about ideation. I've just noticed that looks a little bit like a red stripe can. That's not the intention. So why am I talking about teams so much? Because real ideation takes bravery. You need to be completely in flow and not distracted by what people think, again, including yourself. And when I say team, I do not only mean your direct team, just your design team. It's not just about that. It's about the experts you invite in. It's the stakeholders. It's the participants. It's the community. It's the people with lived experience. They need to become part of your extended team. They need to be part of the ideation. You need the right people in that room. Collaboration and co-creation is key when you're tackling wicked problems. I will repeat what I said at the start. It's designing with, not for. I've seen many students and many design teams noodling around tables, doodling brainstorms, and only really talking to each other or occasionally their flatmate, musing ideas that they might not have enough sight of. Now, what I'm hoping at this moment is 90% of you going, how dare she say that? I speak to more than my flatmate. And that's fantastic. Keep doing it. Get out of your comfort zone. I'm hoping you're saying, that's not me. And if it is, ace. But if you are recognizing that, stop. Stop noodling and go and talk to the humans involved. Next. Ideation. So this is from the D School. Ideation is the mode of design process in which you concentrate on the idea generation. Mentally, it represents the process of going wide, so divergent or lateral thinking. You might have heard of it in different ways. So it's just going wide. In terms of concepts and outcomes, ideation provides both the fuel and also the source material for building prototypes and getting innovation solutions in the hands of your users. You need to get it in their hands. They need to be able to smell it, to lick it, to do what they like with it. They will always use it in a different way to what you think. Next. And quickly, I am going to add this in here. A great solution to the wrong problem will always fail. Take time on your how might we's, your problem statements, your point of views, whatever you want to call them, plus the research that got you here. Don't think that is a light sort of space. Don't accept the brief, rip it up, ask the 5 whys, look at the root cause. Don't accept the phrase that often comes after the answer to the question why, which is, well, that's just the way it's always been. Doesn't have to be, okay? Dig deeper, ask questions. Being a good designer is actually about asking good questions. Next. So I'm going to go through a couple of idea principles, and then we're going to jump straight into the next part. So ideation principles. Yes and. Yes and is an improv tool. It's amazing. So yes and. You literally go yes and to somebody's suggestions. You don't go no or yes but, just as the dream destroyer. It's yes and. And the great thing is that builds ideas. But always remember, at some point you need to stop yes anding. You need to shape it back. You need to bring it back into reality. But when you're in ideation phase, keep in that yes and. It's quantity over quality. You will have recognized this so far. Team is everything. Use your collective intelligence. Ensure everyone has space to contribute. Next. It's about focusing on pain points and opportunities. So pain points and opportunities. It's about thinking outside the box. I hate that term, but it's useful. But also remember what's inside the box. We've got to stop inventing stuff that actually exists already. There is a fantastic article that I've linked here. If you want this slide deck, at me on Instagram or Twitter, I'll send the deck to you. There's a fantastic link here about how duct tape saved the Apollo 13 because they had nothing else. They had to think inside the spaceship. And postpone judgment. I've gone into this already. Okay, next. So you might have heard of this one. It's old but gold. It does work. It really works for some people. I have heard people go, oh no, they're talking about energetic 8. So I get whiplash from this. But if you've not, this is great. I call it the Speedy 6 or the energetic 8. All you do is take a sheet of paper, fold it into 3 vertically and then half horizontally. And then you give the participants 1 minute per idea. So usually you just build on the idea. You say 1 minute, next idea, you can build, or you can have a completely different one. And you can come out with, in a team of 5, they create 30 ideas in 60 minutes. But recently I've been adding twists. So by adding prompts, like what would Greta do? Draw your idea. What if digital did not exist? What if the budget was infinite? So getting people to think in different ways. So prompts, get them to draw it. You could give them 10 minutes each and actually give them clay, give them Lego, make them build it. Bring it out of people in different ways. Some people don't like writing. They would prefer to draw. Some people can't communicate in different ways. So get them to do it in different manners. A fantastic thing about this is when you do it, you have your first idea. By the time you've got to your 8th, you've pushed back, you've pushed past that first idea, that second idea. You've got to that idea that might seem a little bizarre, but it's about generating quantity for quality. Next. Round robin, again, this is not a new way of working, but what I've loved about doing a round robin ideation online is it's bringing different people into the space. You can do silent round robins, so this really helps some of the more introverted people. What I suggest doing this online is turn the cursors off so people don't know who's actually submitting. So round robin is super, super easy. It's basically, you post the idea and then it's passed to the person on the right, and on the Miro board or mural board, you just go, and it grows from person to person. And the thing with the round robin is, not everybody's a fire starter. Some people are really good at fanning the flames. Some people are really, really good at sort of throwing matches in there and sort of making it burn brighter, but they might not be the fire starter and they just need that trigger from someone else. They might see your idea in a different way, and that's fantastic. So again, this is great for slightly more introverted people, or if you've got managers or different hierarchies or different power in the room. Do it silent and do it without the cursors on so they can't see whose idea is whose. And then nobody anchors to the loudest voice, nobody anchors to the manager or the person with the power in the room. Take that away. Okay, next. Wonderful. So again, not new. You're seeing a theme here. It's not new. It is underused. So Edward de Bono was a physician and psychologist, author and inventor, philosopher and consultant. He created the term lateral thinking. Your designers, I suspect you're used to lateral thinking. It's very much like divergent thinking. So basically, he came up with the PO. So the PO is a provocation. It's about thinking. Lateral thinking is about pattern switching processes while ideating. So it's about not being afraid to create movement or break the moments. You need to understand that when you're doing something with participants or your team, you need to interrupt them to stop them going into pattern processing. Just a second, I've lost my space. And this works on what de Bono would call an insight switchover. So what you need to do with yourself or your team when you're ideating is take them from a familiar pattern and jumping into a new one. So allowing moments of surprise that trigger ideas and sometimes laughter. So de Bono states that the switchover actually happens naturally through mistakes and misunderstandings as well as through humor. I mean, there's a dissertation on roast pig by Charles Lamb. He tells a tale of a barbecue or a roast pig coming from a house burning down in China and accidentally roasting the family pig. So accidents do happen and do occur, and bacon is created. But we have a tendency to hide mistakes and misunderstandings, and we cannot rely on these happening naturally. That's why de Bono created the principle and practice of lateral thinking. The idea is that it counters the natural and essential pattern forming and pattern reinforcing nature of the brain by intentionally setting out to trigger new patterns that may have never emerged without these prompts. Because let's face it, we can't wait for the pig farm to go up in flames before we can have frazzles. So the PO or provocation allows one participant or the team member to say something that doesn't make sense by itself. The group then moves forward with the idea. There is no judging of the idea, it's just moving forward the idea. This is from de Bono, as I mentioned earlier. He actually gave a question that came up while discussing a factory's waste contaminating downstream. He said, what if the factory was downstream from itself? Which, like we said, sounds ridiculous, but while it seems ridiculous, it did inspire legislation in several countries that required factories to dump their waste upstream of the factory. And then factories had the incentive to keep the river clean. Okay, next. And the final one that I'm going to go through is negative brainstorming. Negative brainstorming is a tool to delay judgment that and one that seems to get really people's juices flowing. The thing with negative brainstorming is it does exactly what it says on the tin. What you do is you look at the idea and you come out with the worst possible idea. People are brilliant at this. We have a lot of negative things going on in our head. So the great thing is use that. Okay. So you get the idea in your team, no judgment, you come up with really, really bad ideas. The great thing about this is it's meant to be bad. So people worry less. They don't mind that they might get judged a little bit. So once people have poured their ideas out, you hone them down and you flip a couple. So you flip it into a good space. Okay. An example could be a bank saying that every purchase a customer has, we round up. So that sounds awful. They're going to make loads and loads of money out of it and keep the money. They're going to keep your money. So you'd probably lose a lot of customers if you did that. So this actually happened. But what if you flipped it? So Wells Fargo, way to save, they flipped it. So for example, if you purchase a coffee for $2.48, the bank charges you £3 and then transfer the difference of 52 into your account. So it's a win-win for both parties with these small increments that add up. So negative brainstorming takes a negative and turns it positive. I'm not going to go into too much detail, and there's a link here, but Shannon Valler, who's an amazing woman who talks about ethics, talks about this in Ethics Kit. She actually does it through the lens of what would the terrible people do? So if you create something, never rely on the fact that it's going to land in the hands of good people. Think about what the terrible people will do with your product. Okay, and last page, please. So let's wrap this up. It feels like we're designing constantly in response. We're putting out fires, dealing with emergencies. We stay downstream, to coin a phrase from Dan Heath's book. We need to create time and teams who can wade upstream to fix the systems that are causing the problems. So again, quote Dan Heath, police chase robbers, doctors treat patients with chronic diseases, the call center reps address customer complaints, but crime and chronic disease and customer complaints are preventable. So why do our efforts skew towards heavily the reaction rather than the prevention? We're so busy pushing growth. Should we be exploring degrowth? Upstream explores the psychological forces that push us downstream, including problem blindness, which can leave us oblivious to serious problems in our midst. So before you even get to ideation or anything that I've been talking about, I want you to build your team. I want you to create that psychological safety. Create a really, really robust team and look upstream. Ask the right people and yourself questions. Ask the right people and yourselves really difficult and hard questions. Collaborate and think, are we actually tackling the right problem? Thank you.
Tash, yes, and thank you for this inspirational speech you just gave us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we have the next, our next expert. He's Francesc Solà. Francesc Solà is partner in Hilatures Arnau, a manufacturer of yarns. And he's going to, Francesc is a consultant, also trainer in foreign trade. He has a law degree and he's a specialist in marketing and market access. And he has been in the managing area in different textiles companies, such as spinning, accessories, fabric manufacturers, and others. He will talk us about his experience in Hilatures Arnau, and we will enjoy it very much. Francesc, thank you very much for being with us, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Veronica. For me, it's a pleasure. Thank you to representing me as an expert specialized. But my simple merit is only to have worked for more than 20 years in the textile sector. So I can only share my experience and the details of the experience I have in Hilatures Arnau as an example of a company that I think could be interesting talking about sustainability. Okay, let me share let me share my screen because it helps a little bit in order to explain a little bit more. Oh, sorry. Apologize. Are you hear me? Yes, apologize to have this trouble with the screen. Let me tell you that I would like to present the project of the company Latures are now, and why it's justified that we are here for 20 minutes of explanation, and how, with this example, I would like to transfer the merit of how a small company has adapted to the market in one of the sectors that traditionally has affected the crisis in Plus, and is one of the really few companies in carding system yarn manufacturing in Spain. Let me tell you that we are even 2 or 3 companies that we do the same in our company. So Ilaturas are now is one of the most interesting companies in textile, not really much because it's turnover, or maybe an example of its ultimate machinery technology, or because of its large investments or in process improvements, but only because of what I think is the reason for great commitment that has been making for a new yarns for sustainability in the sector. Well, the next slide, please, if you can. Yeah. When I meet the company, I simply had the reference for the active publications made by this company in LinkedIn, Instagram, and some meetings shared in the Textile Institute in Barcelona. But after meeting with the manager, Mr. Joan Santamaria, and working with him for more than 2 years, I have known the determination and interest in creating high-quality, sustainable, and recycled products as the only way to survive in this highly competitive market. His grandfather started in 1947, and since then he has gone through various vicissitudes. The traditional production system for recycling wool is traditionally called, in a Spanish expression, something like a poor brother of the industry, and it has always been considered a questionable prestige, because it's understood that not added value is added to the process beyond the reuse of a resource that is waste then. Today is considered a merit, and we are proud to think that this has been done in the company for more than 20 years as a natural way of doing it. Today, of what we are doing here, is an example of a circular economy, and makes so much sense in the second most polluting industry on the planet. In its beginning, the waste of the wool resulting from the spinning process was used to produce fibers, mixed with each other, or maybe with other fibers to give them greater resistance, generates a new thread. At that time, this process was called disrespectfully regenerated. In Spain, this term has a bad connotation. With the results of the yarns, we can weave and make the fabric to produce coats, scarves, jerseys, etc., but only possible when the woven with yarns with a metric number between 14 and 2 is a technical matter, outside of other traditional spinning systems, such conventional or maybe open-end system that is more typical for other fibers compositions like the cotton, and where we search much thinner type of yarns. From 1947 to approximately 2010, the company has engaged in the manufacture of yarns for clothing and fashion industry, the weavers, especially from the industrial area of Sabadell. We are 30 kilometers far from Barcelona, Terrassa, typical industrial area, but also from northern Spain in its beginnings, made fabrics to make wool coats, scarves, and so on. At the time, one of the best clients of the companies was, for example, Burberry, but also the great, especially Spanish manufacturers such as Grupo Inditex, that you, of course, all of you know, Mango, and many others that had their business structures located in Spain. The decade of 80s arrives, and the last relocations of textiles companies in Spain continue in favor of Asia, Turkey, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and the competition begins to be fierce. Spanish textile companies begin to manufacture in other places, and there is only the option to export or maybe diversify the products. Something that the company does, but without having a clear criteria or maybe professionalized structure to do that. A business restructuring must be carried out, and it subsists with half the workers and start some business in food industry and habitat as an alternative. However, the competition in prices and the preference, of course, with rare exceptions, for Asian manufacturers makes the subsistence of the business seriously considered. Slide 3, please. Is not until 2010. The company is about to close, thanks to a French client who proposed the manufacture of technical yarns, especially recycled paramid, that is coming from waste material from bulletproof vests, as something new and a very big challenge. This means adapting all machinery to follow the customer's requirements, training a new workers, and investing in a new components, since the degree of deterioration for the manufacturer of this thread is really big, and this is a big handicap. Components that until now have to be changed every 6 or 8 years now have to be done every year, and with much longer lead times. Thanks to the tenacity, perseverance, sacrifice, typical from the Catalan people, and needing of survive, this company is today a small leader in the manufacture of this type of thread, and there is no other in Europe that can carry out this process in this efficient way, especially in some numbers of the threads, or at least we don't know it. Next slide, please. Today, 80% of the company turnover is represented by this type of thread, paramid, or well-known, maybe you know company, the brand Kevlar as a registered trademark of DuPont, as an American company, or maybe Tuaron from the company Teijin, that it's the Holland competitor. If this is a top quality product, the price is about more than 50 euros as a reference. Its same generic and recycled item ranges in price between 16 and 19 euros. Its performance being very similar, but without the warranty provided by the brand, knowing that the quality can be perfectly bought. This type of article is used to make protective gloves and other industrial elements where its resistance, anti-cut, and abrasion properties are necessary for the end use. Mixed with other elements such FR viscose or preox, they give us a very interesting features that are increasingly in demand. However, we can say that our competitiveness is based on the ability to manufacture these threads at less than the double of the price paid in the first brands than the specific way to produce it. So next slide, please. At this moment, the company is exporting in different parts of the world. For the immediate future, we are considering to search for greater suppliers of paramid fiber in order to minimize the production cost. This is the handicap. Currently, the suppliers are in Europe, but hopefully we are able to find some more in Asian countries. Again, we are going to find some solutions in these countries, something that only changes and is I put a desire. If we can find a plant here in Europe of recycled paramite in Europe where we can only find converters. Another line of developments are interesting mixtures, such as recycled dinema, highly resistant molecular weight polyethylene that provide this type of component to produce really strong ropes, for example, or also protective equipment. We are developing new threads with the manufacturers of this fiber from Holland. Maybe you know the company DSM as an example. Next slide, please. Well, the words circular economy, sustainability, zero waste, of course, are words associated today very clearly in many economic sectors and should be govern any economic activity, and especially in textile sector, as is the second most polluting sector in the economy. If it is now in fashion industry, we have impregnated in our DNA since our beginnings, as we have been reprocessing and giving new life to the waste products, something that today seems it's a quite new tendency, but is something that we do since the first days of the company. For this reason, of course, we clearly maintain the line of textiles or technical threads that represent almost 80% of the company's turnover. And that is what is really helping us to pay the salaries for the workers and satisfy our daily needs. Next slide, please. An evolution of the company and thinking about the future, we have been developed a whole line of articles and a high components of sustainability, either because of their cultivation or because of the beneficial properties that they can have for people by do not use any chemical product in these creations in its creations process. They are all articles made with the raw materials that Ilaturas are now is able to control, controlling the origin and reaching the end customer thanks to the possibility offered by the new digital channels. Next slide, please. In this sense, the company has been able to take advantage of the funds of a European project for the conception and implementation of an online sales platform and the creation of a website that you can find, maybe, I don't know, here is www.bzn.es, where products like scarves, masks, blankets, pillows, and t-shirts are published and it's possible to sell. This is the result of a common desire of the traditional textile manufacturers to control its own sales channel and with a clearly differentiated strategy with online channels different than the other traditional methods to commercialize. Next slide, please. Let me comment you on the more properties of these fibers, and maybe that should be clearly take them into account when creating a new articles. Normally mix it with other to give them a greater resistance and consistency. In this case, the hemp is a resistant and with antimicrobial insulating and absorbent capacities. Use it as a fiber in a memorial way. Very interesting because of the possibility of not requiring herbicides and less water in its cultivation. Next slide, please. This is very interesting. It's called kapok. The kapok fiber has its origins in the fruit of the tree that you can find here called ceiba, a tree that exists in nature and it's not expressly cultivated. It is hypoallergenic, antibacterial, anti-meat, waterproof, and lightweight fiber. Let me tell you an anecdote that the life jacket vests for Titanic were made with this type of fiber thanks to the waterproof properties. The kapok is one of the most sustainable fibers for textiles. It can be combined with other fibers to create a wide variety of fabrics that are comfortable, light, and very soft to the touch. Without any type of additive, we can obtain very interesting properties like humidity control, temperature regulation, insect repellent, and it is one of the most sustainable natural fibers for textiles. Can be combined with other fibers to create a wide range of fabrics. Next slide, please. Another example is the next one again. You can see, sorry, you can see here in this slide where is the cup of fruit, and inside this fruit is the fiber where it's able to convert into a new yarn. Okay. The next slide, please. This one is bamboo. Of course, is another interesting fiber for being a natural bactericide and capable of eliminating most bacteria. You can find now in shirts and socks for the moment, and maybe is a product that you can easily find into the market. Okay. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to commend you the challenge of this type of products in the sector, and in general, what is my opinion after this time working on sustainability projects. And what I must say, where is a great enthusiasm, but sometimes it differs with what is palpable in the reality. One thing is what we discuss in forums like this, and of course that we are very appreciated, but the other is the percentage of this type of products for the general public and the collective awareness we can easily find in the market and to justify to pay for an extra cost. Of course, if you want a sustainable product, maybe you need to pay a little bit more than other product that it's not. You are still in the moments of launch as a niche market where only a small community is aware of the problem and has the specific sensitivity, which is expected to change. Let me comment you some points that is reflected here. Mass awareness of the final customers. With them, I mean that there is still no collective consciousness, although it's increasing. Think that to produce minimally, we need about 450 kilos on the production. That it means 1,000 meters of fabric. How is you pulls ahead with 1,000 meters of fabric to make only a prototype of a trouser, for example? This is a handicap. Natural fibers are difficult to dye in colors, or these are very limited. That means that we must focus on, for now, on natural fibers colors if we want to be truly sustainable, or use natural dyes without too much resistance. This is a problem. Poor resistance, by their nature, they must be mixed with other fibers to have some resistance since they are very volatile. It's common to find composition in this type of products that the maximum of these natural fibers is around the 40%. Of course, you can mix with PLA, this accord, to substitute the polyester, or maybe you can use the tencel that is a viscose from the company Lenzing. There are not too many global suppliers in this type of natural fibers. It's difficult to find them. There is a greater difficulty in production process. Workers and associated machinery must be adapted for a while. High price of the fiber and a cloth, and low productivity. We are talking about expensive products. The weavers, existing weavers, are not used to working with these fibers. More errors and mistakes in the production process, and the process needs for a prior test. So at the end, this is what I want to show you and explain with a practical example how a company has adapted to the market and is interested in moving forward and thinking about the future by investing. At the moment, the prospects are uncertain. The day-to-day pressure are a lot, but we are convinced that the proximity in production for our European clients, our specialty, is increasing value, and being aware that right now we are setting up a plant. For example, if you want to set up a plant like the one we have, you need almost 12,000 million euros. So imagine that in this moment, I think that nobody wants to invest in a business like this one. So this is the end. So thank you very much for your keen attention.
Okay, I just realized I was on mute. Sorry, Francesca. I just said thank you so much for that. And what a sting in the tail at the end. I can't believe that amount of money you just quoted. It's not a surprise. We're finding it difficult to change the world, is it?
Yeah.
And just to steal a comment that you said, I really loved it when you said you sort of impregnated your company with the ideas and responsibilities to really change the DNA of the future. I thought it was brilliant, and it really leads into our next speaker, which is Mark Shayla, because he's worked for companies who perhaps didn't build it into their original DNA, but he's really helped break down sort of systems and structures with innovative thinking, sort of worldwide on a global scale, as well as in small businesses. And I think today he's going to really focus on the circular economy and how to not just make better things, make things better, but to really help the team sort of build into your own DNA of the ideas, a really strong sort of structure for the future, and maybe reference music, which I think is a language we all understand.
Maybe. Yeah, definitely.
Over to you, Mark. All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you very, very much. So if I'm going to share my screen, does that mean I lose me? If I click that and then that, and I don't want to have that cascading thing that we saw earlier. Right, there we go. How does that look? Does that look all right? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so right, my name's Mark, and how do I progress that? Do I need to then be on my screen there? Okay, so my name's Mark, and I want to talk to you about why circular economy is a real opportunity, but I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey first, if that's all right. And I like to start every single time with a little bit of a cheesy joke, and hopefully you can hear that. So, hello, I'm Mark. And my cultural references are old. I'm old, I'm 53. And when my children see that, they always say the same thing. They say, Dad, and my granddaughter, I've got a granddaughter as well, will you just please bring your cultural references up to date? So to bring them up to date, I need to bring them right the way up to the current moment. And you know where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the lowest common denominator of hello, Adele, who is brilliant, right? I'm not knocking Adele. She's amazing. Anyone who my parents can enjoy and my children can enjoy, there's some magic in there, because growing up, my parents didn't like the music that I liked, and we're going to come across that in a minute. And I've put on my career highlights onto one slide here, and I'm going to talk you through not all of them, one or two of them, because I've only got 25 minutes. The first one is the most important one on here. So when I was 9, I went to school in a rural part of the UK. And this was a long time ago. This was the 1970s, and the 1970s were famous for 3 things in the UK. Number 1, amazing music, which we're going to come on to in a minute. Number 2, industrial action. So everyone was on strike. And number 3, really bad food. Like, we're quite good now, but we were really bad in the 70s. And I thought I'd kind of unify 2 of those things. I thought I'd take the school out on strike over the quality of the school dinners, because the school dinners we were having were quite good. And I wanted some of that kind of mass produced, ready meals, fast foods that I had at home. I wanted that at school. So I took the school out on strike. We marched up and down. I had big placards saying, down with dinner, we want sandwiches. And we marched them up and down. And after 3 hours, we refused to come in. And I was the leader. After 3 hours, the teachers said, yeah, okay, you can have sandwiches instead of well-cooked, nutritious, vitamin-laden dinners. And so I went home that night and said to my mum, there's been this thing. I didn't tell her the truth because I was a bit embarrassed, really. And she said, well, Mark, some people may be having sandwiches. Others are going to be having dinners, and you're going to be the one having a hot dinner. Excuse me, my little puppy is going to start barking now. Wait, Zeus, stop it. And so I had to be at the front of the queue on the first regime, on the first day of the new regime. I'm at, one moment, Zeus, give it up. On the first day of the new regime, I'm at the front of the queue with my tray, and I'm facing the only nice dinner lady that ever lived, Mrs. Thomas. And she knew it was my fault. Everyone apart from my mum knew it was my fault. And she said, do you know what, Mark? Do you know what would happen if everybody had sandwiches instead of dinners? And I said, no, Mrs. Thomas. And she said, I wouldn't have a job, Mark. Now, that was the first realization that with great power, there comes great responsibility. And I was 10, and yet this weighed really heavily on my shoulder. And it's true, as a designer, as a design thinker, as a creative, we've all got great power, and we forget that. I'm not going to go through the rest of them. There's loads of stuff on here that I've done that I'm kind of proud of, and also kind of not proud of as well. And I've grown up in really disruptive times, and I'm going to use music as a metaphor for why we should do things differently. I'm going to use music as a metaphor for circularity as we go through. So first off, this is me over on the right, not David Bowie, the other one. That's me, aged about, I'm guessing I'm about 5, maybe 6 there. And I was born in 1968, the height of the social rights movement. Rachel Carson had written a book called Silent Spring, which is all about the kind of harm that the world is doing to us and that we're doing to the world. Gil Scott-Heron was producing some of the finest poetry ever. And he was a poet and a rapper, godfather of rap. And in terms of climate change, we were at 322 parts per million of carbon. That's an interesting figure. Watch that figure. We had hippies, we had Bowie, everyone loves Bowie. We had second wave feminism, more of that to come. We had a bit of glam rock. We had strikes. No one was recycling, and we never heard of climate change. As I said already, we had really bad food, and we had a bit of punk, and we had a bit of Bowie, and I loved dressing up. Do you want to hear some Bowie? Of course you want to hear some Bowie. Everybody wants to hear some Bowie. And the beauty of Bowie is he keeps changing. But this thing was happening. This thing was beginning to emerge, and it was called punk. And where did punk come from? It came from 2 areas. Firstly, it came from a disillusionment with the politics of the time, with the leadership of the time. Does it sound familiar? Anyone sound familiar for now? Yes, we're due some more punk. Number 2, it was a reaction to what came before. Now, I don't know whether Malcolm Garrett's on, but if he is, he's gonna tell me off, right? What came before punk was something called prog rock, which was really long, detailed, 30-minute guitar solos by classically trained, amazing musicians. This was the antidote. 4 or 5 blokes, in the first instance, all blokes, making a noise in their garage. The first punk band in the world was arguably the New York Dolls, actually, but the first punk band in the UK, well, then it was the Ramones, but the first punk band in the UK was the Damned, and they sounded like this. But punk moved north. Punk moved north, and we had the Buzzcocks, and Malcolm Garrett designed this poster. This is one of the most iconic pieces of punk art I've ever seen, and it's brilliant and it's beautiful. And the Buzzcocks, they were incredible. And this really mattered. This punk movement really mattered because it was rebelling, and it was coalescing, and it was pulling creativity from where you paid people to be creative. Up here, it allowed you to be creative yourself. It democratized music, but it democratized art, and it democratized design. And it only got better when it got more diverse, when women got involved. And all of a sudden, punk became melodic and more powerful for being less angry. Just think about that. More powerful for being less angry. Now, I was living in Coventry at this point. I was living at a time there was great change, immigration, jobs were beginning to be lost as we shipped our manufacturing elsewhere. Watch that. And also as we imported jobs, we imported the skills that came with the people that did the jobs. And we imported the culture that came with the people that did the jobs. And it changed Britain for the better. And I sat in Coventry and I watched a lot of these black population moving from the West Indies, beginning to make products for us, with us. And they didn't just bring their hands, they brought their music. And suddenly punk became even better because it kind of morphed. It kind of morphed into ska. And they just sounded better. Diversity makes everything better. And you mix reggae and you mix punk and you get the second generation of ska. And why is that important? Because every single cycle, every single creative moment is a reaction to what came before. Now, what's the antidote to that stripped back, cut back kind of creativity? What's the antidote to electric guitars? to become more electronic, and to become a little bit more, what's the word? Romantic. That's the word. And we had the rise of the new romantics. Quick, look at the carbon figure, 340 parts per million. Climbing up the charts is carbon. And we began to see the shift of the beginnings of this shift to manufacturing overseas. And when you make things overseas, developing a circular economy strategy is really, really difficult. Musically, brilliant. I don't even know where these two people are going, but I want to go with them. They look great. There's a night out and they haven't even got there yet. And musically, it just sounded like the Visage, to my mind, were utterly, utterly brilliant. And at this point, when it drops, you had to be dancing. But they weren't the biggest new romantic band. That was these guys from Birmingham, from the industrial north, and that matters. It matters where you come from. And these guys were utterly, utterly brilliant. But they did forget to change. They stayed like that for 10 years. It wasn't until 10 years later that they got good again. It's really important to change. It's really important to move with the times. And listen, can you hear it? The tone of the times has changed. The customer, we're going to talk about the customer in a minute. They want more and they want better. Now, at this point, we have the antidote to that florid kind of soaring electronics, which was to go back down to kind of guitars again. Look at carbon, 345 parts per million, still climbing up the charts. And we had an influx of cheap stuff. The start of our high on cheap labor phase began in around about 1985. I'm going to play a bit of the Smiths because this guitar introduction from Johnny Marr is nearly perfect. Nearly. No, it is perfect. Let's be honest. It's beautiful. Now, I spent half of this time dancing on one leg with a gladioli in my hand, and I wasn't getting any girls. The people that got the girls were people that looked like this, right? This is a band called Europe. They're Swedish. And this is what happens if Duran Duran locked themselves in a room for 3 years and listened to nothing but their own music. They would come out looking like this. And I'm going to play it and you're going to like it because that's called irony. That's called postmodern irony. But do you know what? At the time, I fought the wars of cool on the dance floors against music like this. And I lost, didn't I? Because it is quite good, I have to say. So what's all this about? Where am I headed with this? Well, every single thing, everything that's happening is in reaction to something before, but it isn't in isolation. There's a whole kind of cultural change that we see that lifts us and that moves us forward. And it was about to happen again. Twice. So at this point, I went to university. I only wore secondhand clothes. The circular economy for me at this point was having things that were secondhand or things that lasted a long time. And I couldn't afford things that lasted a long time. So I had things secondhand. 1 to 2% recycling. Suddenly the stone roses appeared. I know, middle-aged, middle-class white man loves the stone roses, riding his bike in Lycra, carving wooden spoons and making sourdough. Yep, guilty of all of the 4 heinous sins of my generation. But interestingly, this was more than that. This was a morphing. This was bringing something that had happened in Chicago 5 years earlier. Chicago House, early 80s, had emerged, and Chicago House finally arrived in the UK, in Manchester. It arrived hard, and it changed the way we made music, including music like this. And look, you know, I can't fault these guys. Maybe politically, I don't necessarily agree with Ian Brown, but musically, it doesn't get much better than the beginning of this track. Oh, that bit there, I'm gone. But I really like music that moans and complains and is powerful about something. And at the same time as that was happening, Public Enemy, NWA was happening, because they were rapping about something that really mattered. And they sounded terrifyingly brilliant. And this was what I really wanted to get into. And this is a cycle. This is a cycle. Forget what came before it. This is taken in the work of Gil Scott-Heron, and it's bringing it up to date. This is really powerful. Carbon, 355 parts per million. Mass consumption, getting out of control. But we'd solved the ozone hole, right? We'd begun to do that. We changed everything around the way that we use some products, but not all. The problem with climate change at this point was it sounded a bit too nice because it was called global warming. And we had to imagine it as climate change, which doesn't sound quite so nice, does it? Britpop happened at this point. This is, frankly, this is the circular economy of music. This is the 60s happening all over again. I'm not knocking it. I loved it. I was at the center of it, but it isn't new. It was never new, but it was brilliant. Okay, I had kids. You tend to lose track with music, and there's a risk there. So I had to work hard to claw that back. But new rave happened, not really my bag, but that's good. I'm old. Why should I like the same music as the kids? Their answer is I shouldn't. We hit 15 to 20% recycling, and we also hit carbon concentrations of 385 parts per million. We had reformatted climate change. It had become climate change, not global warming, and it became a little bit scary. I was listening to bands like The Hives, which you don't need to know about, but there's this circular thing going back to something slightly more noisy. Then everything changed because the internet happened. This became the most powerful tool on the planet. We democratized creativity. We had third wave feminism, more of that to come. We had the gig economy. We hit 50% recycling. We had a fast fashion explosion, and that can still be circular. More of that in a minute. And we had capitalism 2.0. There was the rise of the far right. We're still dealing with that. And musically, I was listening to Run the Jewels. But heavens to Betsy, look at the climate change figure. Look at the parts per million. We're at 410. This is a disaster. This is an emergency. And circular economy is part of the solution. You all want to know what Run the Jewels sound like, right? They sound like this. And why do they matter? They matter because they're rapping about stuff that really matters. And what about Lizzo? I love Lizzo. She's singing about stuff that really matters. And when you turn on the TV and you can see a leader like Stormzy, that's amazing because purpose is back. Sustainability is back. We care, or we say we care more than we did. Good is the new cool. Maybe good is the new normal. And there's a great line that the rapper Dave used at the Brit Awards this year when he was talking about racism. He said, now, if you don't want to get it, then you're never going to get it. And that's the truth. If you don't want to get it, then you're never going to get it. But this consumer, this Gen Zer, they do. They really get it. And everything is changing because the shift has hit the fan. The power's shifting from left to right, from west to east, from male to female, from old to young, from retailer to consumer, from professional to amateur, from employee to leader. Who wants to be an employee? No. Who wants to be a manager? No. You leaders, every one of you. From product to service, from CSR, corporate social responsibility, doing bad things over here, but spending a bit of money, doing good things over there. That's the old way. To creating shared value, spending every dollar, euro, cent, American cent, pound, yen, well. That's where the future is. And that's where circular economy sits. From wealth to health and from data to insights. Data is dead important, but it's already history. I can tell you what the most popular lunch in Copenhagen yesterday was. I can tell you that by looking at Instagram. And I can tell you what it would be is avocado on toast. But understanding what the most popular lunch next year is going to be, that's another matter. Actually, it's quite easy because it will still be avocado on toast. But you get the point. We've got to learn to play football where the world is going to be, not necessarily where the world is, because we're running out of stuff. Because the stuff that we're not running out of causes conflict. These materials are dug up out of the ground. They're protected by little boys and little girls with guns. And I mean that. And that's terrifying because China owns the means of production. This isn't a criticism, it's a fact. They own access to around about 80% of all the rare earths in the world. This is genius. Their investment in Africa is staggering. This is really interesting. The geopolitics of resources means that circular economy is more important now than it ever was. I'm going to say it again. This is about the geopolitics of resources. Forget the environmental bit. Don't forget it. Just put it over there for now. This is about the geopolitics. This is fascinating. What a time to be alive. And yet we churn out mountains of shite. Some products we use for less than a year and they're thrown away. Some clothing items we buy, they're in the back of a wardrobe. We never wear them. This is terrifying because we can't keep on designing things and selling more and more of them. That's not the future because because Banksy always gets it right. This is a Banksy. Sorry, the lifestyle you ordered is currently out of stock. Shopping has been used as an antidepressant, and that's not sustainable either. This isn't about how much we can accumulate. There's one strategy that some of the fast fashion organizations are developing, and that's around circular economy at the polymer level. Everything becomes made out of polyester. You take it back, you reprocess it. My jumper becomes your t-shirt, becomes your underpants, and we just keep things going. That's great. It's better than nothing, but it's still not sustainable. We need to have a really good, long, hard look at why we buy, as well as what we buy, because we've seen this rise in the belief-driven buyer, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, but significant changes in the way that we define ourselves when we go and buy something. And we've begun to then look at the split and spread out supply chain of different products. And I map this. This is one of the things I do for a living, mapping the supply chain. The supply chain of denim jeans is in red. The supply chain of a pair of polyester trousers is in green. And technically, immediately we'd probably say denim's better than polyester. Well, interestingly, it isn't. When you look at the carbon impact just in manufacture, polyester wins. When you look at the carbon impact per gram in terms of uses per wear, polyester wins. But I thought natural materials were good. They are, but they're not always the best. Let science lead here, and that feels wrong to say that sometimes. Look, to bring this to an end, the way we make money is changing. How do we make more money by selling less stuff? Circular economy, lease models, closing the loop. You own the polymer, you own the materials, you don't necessarily own the product. This is really interesting. Not necessarily like that. Maybe you have a product that lasts a long, long time. So I pay an awful lot of money for my jeans, but they're guaranteed for 10 years. I pay very little money for my jeans because they're guaranteed for 10 years. The business models sit at the heart of this. How do we attract and retain the best talent in the world? By aligning ourselves with something bigger than us. By standing for something that is good. We can define good later. How do we continue to grow as an economy, as a business, as a country? More or better? Has to be better. The world's got no more space for more. The world's got no more resources for more. Look, your job as a creative, as a business person, your job is not to move pencil or pixels. Your job is to move hearts and minds. That's what you do, That's what you do. And when you can move hearts and minds, then we can sell things that are better, and we can keep them for longer, and we can build out emotional obsolescence, and we can build in emotional durability. And that's at the heart of the circular economy. You have to stand for something bigger than you. You truly do, whether that be circular economy, net zero, whether it be creating shared value, whatever it is, you have to stand for something bigger than you, because you're more powerful than you realize. Just think back to that little boy with his tray stood in front of Mrs. Thomas. Just think back to that little boy, realizing that with great power, there comes great responsibility. This is the end panel of the very first Spider-Man cartoon, drawn and written by Stan Lee. And Spider-Man was a brilliant metaphor for this. So you are powerful, you have superpowers, and with that power comes responsibility. And my advice to you is to be a little more left and a little more left and a little less right. You don't want to be the Green Goblin. You want to be the guy in the stretchy suit. Doesn't everyone? We're back to me riding my bike in Lycra again. Thank you all so very, very much for your time. I completely appreciate that I overran slightly. I'm going to stop sharing and come back to you. And then I'm going to come back to there. And then I'm going to smile and go, how was that?
Thank you, Mark. It was amazing. Amazing presentation. You really did a better thing. It's like showing us not only your life, part of your life and your relationship with the music, but also this extraordinary point of view of what it's a circular economy since the designing point of view. Thank you so much. It was a pity that we didn't listen to the music.
You couldn't hear the music?
No, we can hear it. I don't know what happened. Yeah. Everybody was saying, crying.
So that's really interesting, because we tested that. The only thing that's changed is I put my earphones in, And I wonder if that shifted the
Could
outputs
be.
of these. Well, look, I'm really sorry about that. I will share you a playlist which has all of that music on, apart from the Buzzcocks, which I'll put on it.
That would be very nice. Thank you again, Mark.
All
And now we have our next speaker is Celina Tamagnini. And Celina, she's an entrepreneur, and she an enthusiastic believer of all these things that we are talking about. And she created a company called Circular, and it's incredible to have her here and being able to listen from her experience, knowing about more of this wonderful company and business model. So, Celina, very welcome to here. It's your turn now. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I think it's going to be really hard to have a nice presentation after Mark's. I think it was wonderful, even though we didn't listen to music. So thank you for having me. I think you have to share my presentation, right? Yeah, okay. So this is Circular Ethical Workwear. We are in a startup. We started 2 years ago. It's now in November, it's going to be 2 years ago. And we work, well, we try to help the companies to become more sustainable. And I like the phrase that Mark says, I'm working really hard to change minds and hearts. And I tell you the story about it. So next slide, please. So this is part of our business, just to make more circular the textile industry. Next, please. And then it's a little agenda. It's more talking about my experience with the clothing, because I wasn't really a fashion victim or something like that. I didn't know anything about the textile industry, and I know more now. And as well, I will talk about the Circular team, my business partner and co-founder of Circular. Some quick key questions we make, we ask to our clients, and then we try to make them change their heart and their mind, like Mark says. And the new normal opportunities, and as well how we can be part of the change. Next, please. So what's the story behind your clothing? I mean, like the one who is listening to us. Because I remember I was in a textile congress when I was studying all the viability of my company. And then they say, what are you wearing right now? I said, oh, okay. I didn't really notice that it was really important to know what you are wearing. What's the story behind your clothing? I'm not judging. It's just you have to ask yourself if it was a second hand, or if you know who made it, or how it was made it, because these key questions are the future as well for change that mind in our clients. In my case, for example, after 2 years, I finally have my own clothing from Circular. So this is recycled polyester. This is with the personalized logo. There are recycled cotton bottoms, and I'm really proud because it's a show my enthusiasm, my proudness of being the co-founder of the company, and as well because it's a workwear company. So normally we produce workwear, not really to wear in a presentation. Next, please. So this is the team, and this is myself and Luis Ribó, which is the co-founder. I come in from Argentina, so I cannot consider myself as an entrepreneur. I came to Spain 20 years ago, and I am really curious about new challenge and new adventures. In my business partner's case, he was a visionary, because 10 years ago, he found a consultancy about sustainability, and he was just knocking the doors to different clients, the big ones, the multinationals, to explain about what is the social responsibility. And they say, do we have to pay for that? But the good thing, maybe it was too early to make money with that. But then he had a very solid networking, and it helped us now to knock the door and then be listened. Next, please. And when you know everything about the linear economy, it's easier to produce a t-shirt, just to make an example, and then wear it just for a very short time, and sometimes never wear it because you have it there because it was so cheap that you couldn't miss it. And then it's to throw it away is cheaper than try to change the system and then become more circular as we are trying. Next, please. Talking about the linear economy, is always bad news. So there we have to face it. Textile is the new plastic. Last year with the pandemic, all the topics in the press or in the public, how to say, the media agenda was more centralized in the coronavirus, of course, because we have a global pandemic. But textile is the new plastic anyway, because even though we don't talk about it, it's going to overwhelm us with all the textile waste. Next, please. Talking about the linear economy is always, as I said, bad news, bad figures, but there are some positive thinking and positive figures afterwards. As you know, well, the textile industry, they say it's the second more polluted, and there are some discussion about it, but it's one of the most polluted in the world, of course. In 2050, the fashion industry will be one of the most, they will use up a quarter of the world's carbon budget, for example. In the UK, for example, because in Spain we don't have that data yet, the 19% of the world were later incinerated or sent to landfill, which is the worst end we can give to a clothes. And in Spain only, the normal textile waste, we produce 1 million tons of textile waste only in Spain. And for example, Humana, you know, the NGO has 12 tons of workwear, sometimes in a good shape, but it's impossible to recycle, because if you have a logo in a workwear in a second-hand shop, depends of the logo, could be used as a vandalism. So it's the brand reputation for the companies is quite high. So they have to take care of the uniforms, and sometimes they don't know what to do, or they don't know how the process was made, and then they have to change everything. 20 million of that item might be workwear. This is an estimating, it's an internal data. We estimate this, but I think it's much more, because then into the workwear industry as well, we should count the merchandising, which is a typical T-shirt for team building, or the T-shirt or a tote bag we receive in a congress, or there are a lot of textile waste here. Next, please. And as well, the real cost of your label is not the cost of the real cost is not only the money you pay for the clothing, and as well as all the social impact, because we are used to pay really less money for a T-shirt or for a polo, for example. And behind that, there are hands working, and there are stories of people just working really far away. It's just Asia, I don't care, I don't see it. But it's a huge problem, especially for women, and we need to be more conscious about it. And we have to open the eyes and then do something about it. Next, please. So making the linear economy, making circular is really hard. You have to work really hard. You have to be very patient, but it's possible. It's not 100% possible to make it 100% sustainable, but step by step, it's impossible to make this big change. In our case, we work if you see in the left part of the screen, the recycled polyester. We work as well with recycled cotton. We eco-design our clothing to make it easy to recycle at the end of life. This is really important, because 80% of the future of a product, in any product, not only textile, makes it easy to recycle at the end of life. We try to use eco-friendly trimmings, and as well we work for small or medium quantities with the ateliers with women in social risk. And when we cannot work with them because maybe the production is bigger, we go proximity in Morocco or Portugal. And as well, we use sustainable packaging. We try to use eco-friendly transport, and we work in zero waste, which is impossible to make it zero waste, but at least we try to go closer to zero, and we offer a service to collect the old uniforms at the end of life. Next, please. And this is the nice figures about the circular economy. Using recycled polyester or using recycled cotton is less energy, we use less water, and we impact with less carbon emissions. This is the good news about circular economy. It's hard work, but then we can do it. We can make it. This about the eco design, I already talked about it, and as well the social impacts. Just to know exactly who is made in your clothing. This is really important, especially because women they have no really fair wages, and we need to empower them to give them a second opportunity. And the other side of the recycling part in the workwear industry in UK is that 90% at least is recycled in the UK. Next, please. So this is our proposal. It's just working with sustainable materials. We try to create zero waste, and as well social impact, as I repeated 3 times. Next, please. I'm doing a spoiler of my own presentation. This is 3 questions we always ask to our clients, and I think they work. They work really, really well, because I can tell you when we launched Circular in November 2019, we thought we were just doing small steps, and in fact, we were going really fast. And in March, as you know, the pandemic, we have to close it down, and then we have to rethink everything. And in Spain, we had an opportunity to offer face masks. And I have to say that the first clients who purchased the face mask, they were clients we visited before pandemic. So these 3 questions we asked them, they work, because they buy face masks. They buy face masks because they need it in that moment. Maybe without pandemic, they they will go for the aprons or the t-shirts or the hoodies or the trousers. Who knows? But at least we have the seed of the sustainable in their minds, and we were changing their minds, and we were changing their hearts. So one of the questions is, what material is made of my clothing? You can ask yourself as well for the clothing you are wearing right now. So next, please. We work with, as I said already, recycled polyester, recycled cotton, organic cotton, and as well some leftovers, because during pandemic there were a lot of suppliers that they have leftovers because of the pandemic. As you know, big companies, especially the fast fashion industry, they order 18,000 meters of fabric, for example. If they cancel, then the supplier has a really huge problem with the textile waste. So there were a lot of leftovers. Next, please. And as well, this is the hands we were talking, who made it. We really like to talk with the women who are working in the atelier, and then we like to hear their stories. And if they are happy, I have a story. When I was starting to found Circular, I visited the atelier, and I remember they opened the door, and it was only one woman in the sewing machine, and then there was the coordinator, and everything was quite dark, only one light, and they were just not really working in that moment because they needed more orders and everything. And now it's really busy. Sometimes I need to ask or beg to have my productions in front of others, because they're really busy. And I'm really happy, because as we grow, they grow. Next, please. So we work with socially responsible manufacturing. Especially, we try to choose atelier with the top manager, that they are women in the top manager, or not only just the woman working in the machine. And as well, as soon as we have it, because we don't have it yet, we are going to donate the profits to increase these opportunities for these women in the ateliers. Next, please. So another question is, so we're having 3. One, the material is made of our clothing, who made it, and the last one, and very important, what's going to happen with it, because we are producing new clothing, and then we need to give a solution at the end of life. Next, please. And in that case, like, the eco design is a key, and as well collecting the garden at the end of life. Sometimes not every single piece could be from clothing to clothing. So we need to rethink what we can do the upcycling, not really the recycling. Next, please. This is our corporate video, so I give you the time to scan the QR. It's not, and you can watch it later. This is they have the English subtitles. If not, you can go to YouTube and then you can type circular ethical workwear and then you will find it. Next, please. So we are very welcome with the early adopters in 2020 against any idea what was going to happen for us, because we were in a startup just only 4 months before pandemia, and then it was a huge successful because we have a great value proposition. So in the middle you can see the Hermanos Torres, which are a very famous chef brothers here in Spain. They used to have a TV program, and then they are quite well known. They trust us, and we produce the chef jackets with the same woman. You saw the picture, which is Marilyn from Senegal. But as well, there were some with face masks and other merchandising or T-shirts for a restaurant. In 2020, we have 25 clients, and 10 of them repeated or mask or the workwear, but they are quite loyal. So our value proposition is good for them. Next, please. And as well, we have quite good media coverage here, but I think the clue is the value proposition we offer. It's not only a workwear, it's a workwear company that try to close the loop, and this is really hard. And this is something we offer to clients. We are really flexible because we're in a startup. We are agile, answering back, and we are agile, proposing different options to do a pilot project, for example. And some of them they trust, some of them they wait until we get bigger, as they say. But this is the nice part, of course. This make my mom and my father proud from Argentina. But the reality is the next, please. Is the volumes in the industry for years and years they were just working for the fast fashion industry. The volumes were just huge, and now it's changing because we're small. We are working on a concept which is the present and the future, but we don't work exactly the same amount of meters. And as well, the pricing barrier. When we have a commercial talk with them, with the client, and they are really in love with us and all the proposal, as soon as we send the budget and the economical proposal, they just change their mind, or they ask for less quantity, or this is a huge barrier that we have to fight against, and that we are very patient to do it. The reality about recycling and upcycling, I will talk later about it. And as well, the raw material is increasing all the time. So even though we make a proposal 6 months ago, and then the client journey is that long, at least here in Spain, and I think in Netherlands it's more or less 4 months, but here in Spain it's between 6 and 10 months. And when they came finally with the yes, maybe the raw materials are not the same price. So we have to reoffer and rethink the proposal. And as well, if you're very positive and you want to found a company, or you want to start your own brand, my advice would be look for a final investment from the beginning, and think because it's a long-term thinking. Sustainability is not one day to another. So it's just we need to think, as Mark said, is a business model that we need to rethink. It's not about buying more and more. It's just leasing or renting, or giving a second opportunity or a second life to the textile waste we produce. Next, please. As well, the reality of the recycling, because not everything can be recycled in the textile industry. Cotton is quite good from clothing to clothing, but then all the amount of fibers you get from cotton is not that big. So it's quite impossible to get a t-shirt with more than 50% of recycled fibers. Polyester is good for recycling, but as well is the mix of composition is not really good. The polyester is good for recycled felt, for example, which is one of our business units that we are improving now. And as well, all the mix and in our case, because our business model is based in B2B, for us it's quite easy to identify the composition of the fibers, because normally or mostly all the workwear is based on polyester. But the B2C business or the B2C textile is a mix of everything, and it's really hard to recycle. Next, please. So this is why we offer as well to our clients why if we start from the end. And the end means we garden your old uniforms, and then we, with 100% traceability, we can produce recycled felt. And then we can produce the merchandising, which is 100% recyclable. So even though we created a new product, this product now is becoming more recyclable than the first one, which was the uniform. So we can as well help the atelier working with us with the merchandising that could be necessary, could be a bag, a hand backpack, or any item for a promotional item. Next, please. Okay, that's it. Sorry. So if you have any question, I can stay and answer your question. So thank you very much for having me.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much, Selena. That was actually brilliant. I just, in terms of the challenge, I really love what you were saying about, like, it is really hard, but it's possible. If it wasn't hard, this wouldn't be a challenge, and if it wasn't possible, we wouldn't be asking. Yeah. So thank you so much. And yeah, just to bring today's talks to an end, I'd like to introduce Salome Arias, if you'll probably correct my pronunciation, who is a activist and passionate about social change, about cultural differences, about making change happen. And I think it's going to be a fantastic end to the talk. So she's going to bring basically the different cultures, the different angles, the different society facts together, and sort of really just bring it to an end. So hello, Salome, lovely to meet you. Hello. I'm going to pass over now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone. I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me in this fantastic conversation. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, thank you for introducing me. I think I'm going to introduce myself. So if you can share are you sharing my PowerPoint? Yes, you are. So I'll be talking a little bit about circular economy in fashion, but I think in a different way. I would say, I hope we have like a relaxed conversation today about this, because it's more like a philosophical way, like a shift on how we see circular economy, especially in textile industry. So my name is Salome Arias. Thank you so much. I'm the coordinator of Fashion Revolution in Portugal, but I'm also a fellow at the NOVA FCT, at the Center of Environmental and Sustainability Research on FCT. So where I am developing my PhD research on consumer behavior. So I'm bringing a little bit of two on both sides. Okay, so the activism, the fashion activism, but also the research side on the consumer behavior. So yeah, I have these two sides, but I have a third side. I mean, can you shift to the other slide? Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I joined a group of young activists. They're all much younger than me, but I joined them, and they're all climate activists fighting for climate and social justice. And for the last couple of years, we started blocking main roads in Lisbon in order to, shouting for people to wake up, right? To shouting for collective action, shouting for togetherness, for real political reaction, right? Because don't you sometimes like wonder, how are we facing one of the biggest, I mean, if not the biggest and most catastrophic crisis in human history with such apathy, right? So I really wanted to know, to understand, how are we still scaling up consumption, especially in fashion and also in production? Yeah, you can, next slide. So yeah, here I am with my team at the very beginning of the fashion revolution in Portugal. And I want to tell you one thing about fashion activism, really, is that, do you know what most people tell us, or what is the most common thing people tell us when they join fashion activism? They say, I feel guilty. Please tell me what should I do to be a better consumer? Please tell me what I should do to be a better fashion designer. And most of people say this is shocking, really, because this is very common, this stance, right? So they ask all the time. I mean, a lot of people, they even think that they are not worthy of fighting for climate justice because they feel they are not doing enough as consumers and as fashion designers, as if this wasn't everyone's fight, right? So this little word, guilt and consumption addiction, and this dynamics around ego, the ego of consumer and the ego of the fashion designers, really it really interests me. So it interests me. Sorry. So I started looking deeply into it. Next slide, please. So today, probably you know this. You have seen this in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation report in 2017. I'm not getting too extensive into it, but we didn't slow down consumption, neither production, right? So we even doubled production and consumption for the past 15 years. So I mean, something is wrong here, right? Because we have been so focused for the last year, so focused on activism and environmentalism and climate justice and the Paris Agreement and all. And how are we still speeding up consumption, right? Next slide, please. Another thing is, I don't know if you've seen this, but I'm so happy to read the British Fashion Council report saying that one of the key target outcomes is we should reduce the volume of new physical clothing. So for us, this is like red alert. We really need to start thinking about reducing production, okay, and start questioning, what is this big word, green growth and green capitalism and sustainable development? Does that make sense? Is that an oxymoron? Is that a paradox? I think that we should put that conversation over the table. Next slide, please. So one of the things I had to went through while doing my PhD is understanding what the European Union is planning to do, okay, towards the circular economy. And I mean, so their idea is, I mean, if you read the Circular Economy Action Plan, it's pretty clear that they are focused on the idea of green growth. So they mention a lot of times, like, our plan is to scale up the circular economy, we are looking for regenerative growth, So they're all about, getting circularity and scale it up. Okay. Next slide. So they're planning to do this through decoupling. So what is decoupling? I'm not going to get too boring on this, but decoupling is really a very simple idea to make something efficient, right? So decoupling is just separating economic growth from resource use. So basically, it's just I would say it's just the idea of producing more out of less resources. And this really sounds great, right? Because it's the definition of efficiency. Okay, next slide, please. So their idea to get into efficiency is to make products last longer. First of all, so they're all into durability right now. So no fast fashion, no low quality. So we have to focus on make products last longer. Which for me, it sounds really great, and for all of us, I hope. And another plan is to to go against, to have policies against greenwashing, and again against planned obsolescence. It all makes sense, because if we want to make products last longer, in order for them to be reused by a lot of people, they have to last longer. And they have to, I don't know if you know what is planned obsolescence. If you don't know what it is, please just raise your hand. I don't know how this works specifically. But it makes total sense that the European Union would be against planned obsolescence, because planned obsolescence makes products last, to have a certain life cycle, a certain span of life, in order to spur consumption and to spur production. Okay. So what are their plan? Their plan in the European Union is to focus on reusing and recycling. In order to have a green growth, we are using growth and reusing and rewearing and repairing and reselling and recycling to make the GDP grow, right? But in order for this to happen, things will have to rotate a lot. Okay, so imagine as if you are throwing away your trash, your garbage, and someone is using it to create profit, but no one is buying it from you. So our idea of waste today, it's just products rotating, and with that we are creating more profit. So just to close this idea, so the European Union don't need planned obsolescence anymore, but they will need perceived obsolescence, which is a totally different idea. So perceived obsolescence is something that makes us perceive something as obsolete, even though it's not physically obsolete. So the difference is planned obsolescence is like building a t-shirt with a low quality fiber, and you will throw it away because it will get damaged, that t-shirt. Perceived obsolescence will tell you to throw away or give that t-shirt because you feel that t-shirt is not in anymore. It's not fashionable, it's not trendy. So we don't need planned obsolescence, but in order to have green growth and things rotating, we have to have this, perceived obsolescence in order to make things rotate in our economy. Was I clear about this? I hope so. Next slide, please. So they are really focusing on this idea of one man's trash being another man's treasure. So in order for things to rotate, and this is really curious because we are using, it's quite, it's a subversion of the idea of circularity. Circularity is not rotation. And we need to have this idea of, the goods rotating all the time. And for that, in order for that to happen, we have to create the idea of waste. So we are fueling this idea of waste. When we have to create this idea that waste exists, and then we have to sell the idea that one man's trash can be another man's treasure. But the problem is that we are producing way more clothing that, first of all, we are able to reuse, and second, that that our technology is able to recycle. Next slide. Thank you. And another thing is that we keep making up these ideas around waste when waste is not a thing, really. If you go through it, waste is not really a thing. Waste doesn't exist. It's just a product in the wrong place, right? But in order to spur this idea of green growth, we suddenly create these concepts. For example, that stock. I mean, what is fabric that stock? That stock is just outlet. I mean, deal with it. So, the industry of fabrics, they will just have to deal with their own product. It's not as if, they will throw away the rest of their fabrics. I don't know if I'm being clear about this. Next slide, please. So for you just to know very briefly, I just want you to look at that circle, that black circle on the top of this slide. This is also a report of Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Just for you to know that the recycling technology is still very inefficient nowadays. So we just we recycle, we upcycle, and we downcycle our waste to other industries, and we also use downcycled waste from other industries. But recycling textile into textile represents less than 1% on our industry, on the textile industry. Okay, so for you to have an idea. Next slide, please. Another very interesting interpretation about what I just said of Liz Ricketts. Please, if you don't know this project, please look into the OR Foundation. Liz Ricketts, is the leader of this foundation. She just said a couple of months ago that it would take H&M's loop machine 50,000 years to deal with 1 week's worth of waste from Cantamanto. Cantamanto is one of the most, I don't know if you know this, but it's one of the most popular markets, secondhand markets in Accra, Ghana, where, it's a secondhand market that is completely and fully saturated by clothing. So for you to have an idea, everything that we throw away here in Europe and maybe North America and Australia, everything is, most of it is being shipped away to African countries, and Ghana is one of them. And for you to have an idea, every week, so it's every week 15,000 garments get into Accra in Ghana, and Ghana has only 30,000 inhabitants. So for you to have an idea, I mean, they don't need more clothes, okay? We need to stop thinking that donation and recycling is going to solve all our problems, because all our garments we are throwing away, they are being, they're being shipped to Africa, really. Next slide, please. So again, so for you to don't forget, circularity is not textile waste rotation. Circularity is it's not about designing objects, it's about designing life cycles. It's about, designing life cycles that are not here to damage and just nurture the overall ecosystems. Next slide, please. So what are the European Union's plan to in order to get this decoupling? So one of the things will be efficiency, so producing more or getting more out of less, producing more out of less resources, less time, less human resources, less material, less, I don't know, I think that's all, like human resources, material, and time. Or through sufficiency, that would be adequacy. Actually, sufficiency is the same as adequacy. But the thing is, even so, a lot of studies say in the scientific community say that even if we meet efficiency or sufficiency, we get something that economists call rebound effect. And what is a rebound effect? The rebound effect is that when we get something, when we make something more efficiently, it will certainly get cheaper, and that will make consumption go up. So in other words, for instance, for consumers, if they get something, if they can consume something more efficiently, or if they get, for instance, something, some appliance that is more energy efficient, study says that consumers will compensate that energy and that money somewhere else. The same happens with sufficiency. So I'm just telling you this because this is really like a key point to question the validity, how to say this, to the value of green growth. Because if we don't change, deeply, our culture of decluttering and, this idea that minimalism is throwing away things and get new ones, we will never live better with less. And I'm saying this, living better with less, because that is like the most important thing we should look up to. So instead of aiming at efficiency, we should aim at living better on less. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of R's nowadays, right? Rethink, refuse, reduce, reuse, rewear, repair, resell, recycle. And for now, I will just erase the last ones and let's look at the, the most, the biggest priority, which is all the R's that come before reuse and recycle. We should think about those first, right? So the thing is, we have been thinking about, rethinking design, zero waste pattern cutting, and refusing, which is almost as the same as reduce. So it's like refusing, rethinking, so a reassessment of need, of consumer need, and all of that. Please tell me if I'm going too fast, and if you have any question, please, write down on the chat, or, scream. But one thing I have been finding in my PhD research is that we really need to, and this is like, thank you, and this is always there's a lot of calls among the scientific community to reconnect. So this is something, it's more like a spiritual thing and a philosophical thing, in a way we look really into ourselves as humans, as I mean, in the way we look at our purpose as species. So reconnect is really about reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with ourselves, and reconnecting with what we wear, with what we do, with what we create, and how we perceive adorning ourselves, the real fashion ritual as something sacred. And why is this important? Next slide, please. I have been, again, I'm not going to be super boring about this, but I found out that, people that are really into, raising awareness, knowing themselves, connecting with nature, connecting with others, perceiving themselves as part of a whole, of perceiving themselves as one with the world, with others, with nature. They are most likely to engage, and this is very consistent scientifically, they're most likely to engage in ethical behavior, and specifically in ethical consumption. And another really interesting predictors about this reconnecting thing is that it is also positively related to activism, environmentalism, mindfulness, self-transcendence, and also life satisfaction, and also, which means living better on less, and also voluntary simplicity. Okay, so consuming less. Next slide, please. Okay, so other alternatives for our economy. Okay, if we look into the growth economy and overall, all the alternatives, all the ideas, all the concepts and proposals for post-growth economies, they all have something in common, which is creating alternative variables to the GDP, right? So other variables other than, profit, which will be like around well-being and, happiness and awareness. And this will have to, so we will have to face a profound revolution in value if we want to shift from GDP to any other measurement, right? So we will have really to reassess, to redefine what is value for us. And what is value for us, really? So under capitalism, when we look into the fashion supply chain, we have tons of markups inside the same price, right? Because we have so many players in the same price between the consumer and the laborer, I mean, the maker. You have So the laborer works for the factory works for the agent works for the brand for the retailer, and then the consumer gets the product from the retailer. Because for the last, couple of centuries, we were so separated as consumers from the makers, we don't know how to value work anymore. We don't know how to value, the number of hours that takes to make a t-shirt or to knit or to, before everyone used to know how to embroider or to, to sew a button. And nowadays we are so separated from that. We cannot even see, the seamstresses working. So it is really impossible to value the amount of work. And other thing, because we really don't know the story of our clothes, we don't have the storytelling. So we don't have the added value. The only value we have is €5 is the price. So it's not surprising that we devalue a t-shirt that costs €5. So it is very complex to blame the consumer over something that is such, a systemic problem. So one of the alternatives we present in Fashion Revolution is, next slide, please. Thank you, is swapping. So in swapping, I bet you all know what swapping is. Swapping is just, it's an event where there is direct exchange of clothing, but it can be of anything, really. In swapping, it doesn't, you use no money, right? So it really makes you reassess what you need and what others need. So it really makes you define what value is, because there's no money, just context, right? Just the context defines what is valuable and what is not valuable. So for instance, if you have I don't know, maybe you're in the summer and you have like a really expensive overcoat you don't wear anymore, you are willing to exchange your overcoat with a pair of earrings because it's summer and you won't use your coat. And this happens in our swap markets. And this is so interesting because in opposition of donation and resale systems, donation and resale systems, they really devalue clothing, right? Because you're just throwing away, you're giving. You are not giving a gift. You know what I mean? You're just throwing away. You're donating. You're saying I don't care about this. If you want, just take it away, right? And swapping is different from this, specifically because you are not involving no money. So in order for you to exchange a gift, you have to understand what do you need and what others need. And that really, changed the whole perception of what pricing is. Next slide, please. So I'm almost done here. Just ending by with a picture of us, the whole team of Fashion Revolution Portugal, at the European Youth Parliament earlier this year, presenting alternative economies to the growth economy. So swapping, we went there to set a swap market, and yeah, for us this is our proposal: swapping and reconnecting. Thank you. You can share the next slide if you have any questions. You have here my our contacts, really. And I don't know if you have any questions. Hi.
Hello. Oh, Salome, thank you so much for that. That was really, really, really good. And I don't know if any of the Q&As will come through to the live stream, but thank you so much for sharing your email address. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for the presentation, and I think it's left us at a perfect place to sort of say, in terms of your reconnection philosophy, I think after 2 days of experts from all around the problems and the solutions to industrial symbiosis, it'd be really great for the teams to now just go and reconnect with what your original ideas were, and to start to share the new ideas, like swap the new ideas, like Salome said, like she's describing clothes, but you guys can do it with your ideas based on your original ideas to sort of define what the value of your new ideas is going to be. So thank you. And yeah,
Thank you so much.
That brings us to a close. So straight away, guys, I'm going to post specifically Tasha's presentation straight away on Edmodo to really help you sort of follow through with your ideation. And then we're going to get in touch about touching base with you on the 28th. Thank you all so much. Thank you to all the speakers. We are going to make this available to you, and we are going to get Mark's music for those of you who couldn't imagine the names he was talking about. So yeah, thank you and goodbye. I look forward to seeing you all soon.